Today, I'm really delighted to have with me Felicity Mathews, one of my partners in business, Unlocked, a BAS agent for many years, bookkeeper extraordinaire. She does all sorts of things. Today, we're going to be talking about how to reduce your debt. We're going to be talking about streamlining your business, making it more efficient so you can make some more money. And we're going to be talking about one of the top 3 mistakes people make when they're running their books that costs them money over and over again. Good morning, Felicity.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
Wonderful to have you here and pass on some information to our people out there listening to us. Some really good topics today, and I'm going to make Felicity laugh because my job today, I reckon, is to get her fired up. She gets very, very passionate about making sure that people have the right information and get to do the right thing. So, we ready to go?
Can't wait.
Can't wait. Excellent.
Yeah.
You can tell that she's a social media superstar from all of this. She absolutely loves it. Debt reduction, big one. I've always said part of what we do in Profit First using that methodology is turn profit into cash, not just on the piece of paper, reduce debt, and then that gives people the money to invest for the future. So start telling us about debt reduction.
Debt reduction is what kills businesses. If they're told that you come to the end of the year and we need to minimise tax, and they're told to go and buy something to be able to have that as a tax deduction in their end of year taxes.
Right.
I just want to say that I'm a BAS agent and I can't give any advice on tax related matters, but I can give my
Yes.
opinion.
Yeah.
So businesses fall into this trap of, I need to reduce my tax, so I'm going to go and buy something. But the thing is, they're spending money to then not have. They're spending money to reduce their tax, but they don't actually have the cash. So what they do is they get loans to facilitate buying of this equipment or whatever it is they want to buy. The problem is it then falls into that situation of, I've got all this debt, I've now got repayments each week, fortnight, month, however that is, and they can't manage that repayment with their cash flow. So to reduce debt, it's better for cash flow for the business to not have as much debt in the business, because cash is
Sure.
king, isn't it? Right? Cash is king.
Yeah.
So we look at our clients and we see what debts they have, and we look at reducing that debt for them, so they actually have more cash in their bank account each week, fortnight, month than they had before, which means they can pay themselves, which means they can have a profit distribution. So we look at those sort of situations.
But sometimes that debt's not even one that has to do with the business. They've got a debt there. Well, it could do with the business, or it could be a personal debt they want to get rid of.
Correct.
And that strikes everyone. We know that the majority of businesses in Australia are on payment plans with the ATO.
Correct.
So we've got these things, this money that we owe to other people sitting there that we need to get rid of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've got lots of examples of that. Before we came on, you were telling me about one person. Now, Nadia before had told us about somebody that got rid of $500,000 worth of debt. You were telling me about somebody who got rid of $50,000 worth of debt. So take me through that process of how that was managed.
So they had a loan of $50,000, which was killing their business. Because the repayments were just a nightmare. So what we ended up doing is we implemented the Profit First system, and we started putting money aside, percentages aside for between the different accounts, but we put money into the profit account. So as per the Profit First methodology, you take your distribution at the end of the quarter. So instead of taking 50% of that, what we did is they were still doing their repayments each cycle, but then at the end of the quarter with the profit distribution, we were putting 49% of that profit distribution into that loan and taking the 1% for them to reward themselves, because you need to be rewarded as a business owner. Otherwise, what's the point of being in business? So by keeping up the repayments and then putting lump sums on at the end of each quarter, we managed to get rid of that debt within 18 months.
Yeah, okay, that's great. How long would the debt have carried on if that system wasn't put in place?
5 years. They were
Okay.
2 years into a 7-year loan.
Okay, so you've got another 5 years to go by putting in a strategy. So consciously thinking about it, understanding what's there, putting a strategy in place to put money away into what we refer to as the profit account, meaning that it's the reward for the owner of the business, the shareholders of the business, to have a dividend from the business, and then choosing to take that and pay down debt with it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And once
Okay.
that
So
debt was
from
gone, we could look at how we were going to use the profit now that they had the full 50% that they could distribute to
yeah.
themselves.
Well, and I imagine from that, if you've taken a 7-year loan and you're now going back to, you've paid it off in 2 years instead of, 5 years, there's 5 years worth of interest that's been saved for those people
Yeah,
on that as well. So
absolutely.
we get to use the profit in some other way, plus we're saving all of that interest that can be used in another way as well.
Correct.
Yeah, that would have made people happy, I'm sure.
Yes, very happy. Very happy.
Very happy. So you mentioned there 50% of that every quarter you're taking to pay down that debt, or to be used 49% to pay down the debt, 1% in reward for the owner. What's happened to that other 50% in that account?
That stays in the profit account and that just keeps
Okay.
building up
And what's that building up for?
whatever they want to use it for.
Okay. So one of the things is it's a rainy day account. You can open
Yeah.
another, in Profit First, it's called Vault. People come up with all sorts of wonderful names for them. So you can do that as well with the balance of
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay. So that's
They were
one
saving
method.
for a house deposit as well. So we
Okay.
ended up using that distribution after the loan was paid out. That distribution was then used to build up a deposit for a house.
Okay. So that's again, the not having that interest there is really helping to add up what's happening with that money in there. So that's great. So
Yeah,
pay off a
because your
loan.
operating expenses have reduced, haven't they? Because you're not paying that interest anymore.
Yeah. That's great. The other loans that you mentioned in the business, going and buying equipment, I mean, we have our opinions about whether that's the right thing to do or not, because you're saving the tax but still costing yourself money. So it's got to be strategically worked out. The problem there that people see is, or they don't see, that coming through on the profit and loss, the payments coming through. So is that one of the things that comes up when you look at this, that people don't understand? They've borrowed the money and they might have even done cash flows, but they haven't incorporated actual cash, just what's on their profit and loss.
Yeah, people don't. I have so many people say to me, I've made X amount of profit, but I don't have that in my bank account, because business owners, not all, but most business owners don't understand that cash is related to both your profit and loss and your balance sheet. So you need to look at them together, and accounting principles don't make it easy for business owners to understand what they actually have. So by implementing the profit first system, they can see at a glance how much money they've got in each of their bank accounts just by opening up their bank account. And then they can make those informed decisions instead of having to look at the financials, which are important. I'm not saying they're not important. They are important, but it's just easier for the business owners to understand.
Yeah, you still use the financials run according to generally accepted accounting principles. Part of that, I
Yeah.
think, is understanding that those accounting principles came from a different place, not really how we use them nowadays in small business. So the profit first works. All right, so that's one. Debt reduction, have a look at what's going on. You've got to understand what's happening with your cash in your business, not just on your profit and loss. And even understanding balance sheets can be quite difficult. I've had an accountant say to me, well, it depends who's prepared them, because they all have their own story and they've been prepared in a different way. Then you can make some decisions about how we're going to get rid of that debt. But there is a system that you can put in place to get rid of that debt. Just need
Correct.
to analyze it and understand it. Great. That's one of the things you do through understanding the books properly. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. You talked to me about efficiency in the business. We had a chat about streamlining the business. You gave me a great example of how somebody streamlined. Take us through that.
A client in the building and construction industry, they were quoting using pen and paper, and I'd been with them for a while, and I was like, you're not making any money. I don't think you're pricing correctly. So
Yep.
we had a look and we implemented a software, so that then they could quote effectively. So this software, he can put his plans in, he can scale them, he can take them off, he can put his pricing in there, so that he, instead of sitting there, he always goes out to the job site, goes to the job site, has a look as well, instead of sitting there for hours and hours doing this quote on pen and paper, and then his wife typing it up in the computer to then send off to the prospective client. He now
Yeah.
can just do it all himself. His wife doesn't need to be bothered with it because she has a full-time job. All
Yeah.
tradies, they bring their wives in to help with the books, not understanding that the wives have a full-time job as well, plus kids, no doubt. So then he can now quote effectively, but we also talked about what he wasn't including in his quote, such as loans for vehicles,
Okay.
things that aren't directly involved in the job, but is actually an expense to the business.
Yeah. Okay. So it reminds me of people. I worked with a kitchen company years ago, and the kids had taken over from dad, and dad had done it on a cost plus basis. So cost of materials plus, so put a markup on that, and they were still using that. And I said it might have worked if he'd done the calculations in the day, but 30 years later, you need to go and recalculate what that would be. There's nothing inherently wrong as long as you've got the maths behind it right. But if you're
Correct.
leaving out, and so that, brings us back to that loan you were talking about before, that could be one of those items that's being left out because it doesn't appear on the profit and loss, maybe.
Correct, because it's not thought about.
Yeah. So what difference did that ultimately make to that business?
He started making a profit. He could pay his suppliers on time. He could actually take a pay because he was quoting correct. He's now quoting correctly. It took a while,
Yeah.
but we've got there.
So part of that was getting pricing right.
Yes, and making sure he was including everything that should have been included.
Yeah. Okay. So you can do, we can offer that sort of pricing review to people as well. And then the other part of that was streamlining it by putting in the quoting software, which I imagine also means that the quotes are more accurate
They are.
because you've already determined like square meter rates or whatever it happens to be that's got to go in there.
Yeah. And we're getting variations out now, whereas before he would sit on variations and then it would go out to the client, and the client would forget what happened 3 months prior and what they'd agreed to. So he would then have to have that awkward conversation and then negotiate those variations, which it was tough. It was tough for him, but we're getting variations out on time.
Oh yeah, that kills them. That's one of the huge things that I'd say to people. Bonus for people: take deposits if you're not already doing it, and then variations. If it's not written down and signed for, don't do it. And you still have to be careful, I think. But they can be so costly, can't they? If you don't get that right.
Yeah, he was not only was he not quoting effectively, he was losing money on the variations.
Yeah, and that falls into that doing that little bit extra, and it can sound mean, doing that little bit extra and go, oh no, I'll just fix that up for you. But from a customer service point of view, we love it. But then if you do too much of that, you're actually, if you're soaking up an hour a day of various people doing little things around the place, that's pure profit going out the door, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So make sure you've got your pricing done correctly is my big takeaway from that. And then if you can use some software to help you with that, to make sure that it's more efficient in getting it done and out there, that can be even because it gets it back to people. So they're seeing the quote more quickly. We've worked with clients who, because they were the quickest in getting to do quotes and getting them out there and running people through it, they won the jobs. It wasn't about being cheapest.
But it looks nicer. It looks more professional.
I think just the communication part of that, the fact that you've got back to people instead of letting them wait around, because that's one of my bugbears is people, clients having to wait and there's a lack of communication. I often put in with people a proactive communication So even if you've said something's going to happen in 3 days' time, keep your client updated, because I'm one of those people that says, I know you said that, but I'd like to know where it's up to, because
Yeah.
I'm worried about it. Something, just keep me informed. It's just like they do nowadays with the tradies, sending a message from service mate or whatever, they're on their way. It's like, well, if you could do that the day before, rather than, because you see people who have taken a day off to be there for something to happen, and on that day they get a message saying we're not coming. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that's not good enough.
Exactly.
Anyway, all right. One last thing that I know, I hope we get the really fiery Felicity. I hope we get the really fiery Felicity going on this one.
Too many F's in
Payroll
there.
and super. Now, first of all, I'm going to start. What are going to be the rules for paying superannuation from next financial year?
So they're bringing in what's called Payday Super. So whenever you run your payroll, so whatever cycle that might be, you have to pay your super at that point in time. At the moment, your super is, the minimum is to pay it quarterly, and you have to have it in your employee's super fund before the date. You can't. The date is the 28th day of the month following the quarter. So if you pay on the 28th, you're late. And if you're late,
Okay.
it's not good.
So, right, I understand. So you're saying if your BAS is due on the 28th of the month, is that what we're saying?
No, we're talking about super. So
No, I
super.
understand that. But
Oh,
when you're
okay.
marrying up those dates,
Yep.
that's what I'm trying to
Okay.
understand. So is that what the super is due on the same day the BAS is due? Is that correct or not?
If you're not using a registered BAS or tax agent, yes.
Okay. So find out when your super is due,
Which is
and
the
that's one of
28th
those
day
things.
following the quarter. Yes.
Okay. And
So 28th
then,
of October, 28th of January,
yeah,
28th of April.
but you're saying you can't pay it on that day, like use a BPay or anything even,
No.
risky. You've got to make sure that you've got the money beforehand and paying, so it's actually landed in the account.
Yes. So
Yeah.
rule of thumb is
Gotcha.
pay at least 10 days before the due date, because it's got to go
10
through
days.
clearing. Yeah, because it's got to go through clearinghouses, and the
Yeah.
clearinghouses, they hold on to your money to
Like
get
the banks
interest,
used
and
to,
then
even
send it
more in
off.
the old check days. So that's big. So next year you're going to have to pay that with your pay run. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's called Payday Super, which is great for cash flow purposes.
Absolutely.
Your expense for your payroll is that for the week. So why not just get it out the door and paid, and then you don't have to worry about it, and you know what money you actually have.
So at the moment, if people aren't doing that, when you put in place a system, you're transferring that money off to a super account to hold it for when they're going to pay it anyway.
Yeah.
But you've told
Yeah.
me you do something even a little different with your clients to make sure that it's taken care of.
Yeah, so we have all our clients on a monthly super pay cycle. So we're always getting the super paid monthly, and I've started moving some clients to Payday Super now, just so they're ready for it, because it's coming, and they have to comply with that. So mainly for our clients, they're a little cash strapped. We've moved to Payday Super so that we're running the payroll and we're paying the super at the same time, and then it's
Yeah.
done and they don't need to worry.
Can I say one of my best ever clients and favorite clients, we moved early on to paying all their tax obligations, all their government obligations as they went along, and their accountant couldn't understand it, but they'd been in trouble before and they understood, and that's how my brain worked, and they understood we'll never be in trouble again, because you can't go and raid the ATO account and say, can I have that back to pay this bill? So it's gone, and it really shows
Oh.
up where your business is. Now, the other problem you highlighted, if it's not paid when it's meant to be paid, the super,
Yep.
what's the problem that occurs there?
So if your super isn't paid on time, what happens is that let's say you have a payroll, and your payroll for the week is $10,000, and $5,000 of that is ordinary pay, and $5,000 of that is overtime. Now, super isn't, you don't pay super on overtime. However,
Okay.
if you don't pay on time, that whole 10,000 payroll is now has to have super calculated on. So instead of only calculating 12% on 5,000, you now have to calculate 12% on 10,000. Not only that, it's no longer a tax deduction. You have to pay fines and you have to pay interest. Pay your super on time.
So by the time that in that particular scenario, by the time you get through that, I can't even figure that out. You're at 2.5 times or whatever what you should have been paying. So most businesses probably won't have that sort of implication on overtime, although there's businesses out there, like the FIFO people.
But it's any pay item that you're running, super is now calculated on it.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that the level of overtime we were talking about is what I was talking about. But yeah, so for a lot of businesses out there, people are working on overtime all the time. So the implication there is big, and the lack of tax deductibility of it if it's not paid on time is huge. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So get that right. So if we come back to it, we started off with there's a system you can put in place to reduce debt. And what that is going to do is, number one, get rid of the debt. So that's going to save a lot of stress and all those things for you. Save the interest from the balance of the super that you can use for something else. And that's all part of working out what's going on in your business so we can determine a profit percentage to put away to do these things. Get some efficiency in your business by streamlining with the apps. You have to be careful of what you put in place and make use of them to do that. And really importantly, part of that is making sure that your pricing is correct, that you're taking into account everything you do. And lastly, the big one of the bookkeeping items there is making sure your payrolls run correctly. That's a whole other episode there. But really importantly, getting your super right, paid in time. Have a look at, do you want to start doing Payday Super now to get used to it for next year? You're going to have to do it next year. Make sure it's paid on time, because if you don't, tax deductibility disappears. You pay super on overtime. You could have a fine. You could have interest. It just goes 27 more ways for the government to get money out of you. So don't do that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Felicity. I'm not sure if we got you fired up enough, but I think you're fired up a bit there. That's awesome. Thank you for that advice. We'll bring you back to give people some more advice. And I think, some people think that, you talk bookkeeping, which is just such a bad name for what you do, because it's an old-fashioned, it's a bit like calling an engineer at NASA a horse groomer. Nothing wrong with horse groomers, but, it's like it's come a long way from where things were before the old-fashioned days. So we'll get you back on again to explain some more things, that simple fixes for some of it. And we can talk about, well, why would you have a BAS agent? Why would we engage you? And I'm going to tell people they can actually do a book review with you. There is a cost to that, but if you just go to businessunlocked.com.au, book a 15-minute with Felicity to talk about it, and then she can book you in for one of those. That would be great. And we do have to say, when we're talking about BAS and tax and all of those things, we're giving some examples there. It's not advice for your business as such. It's general advice, and you have to go and talk to the right people to see if it's the right advice for you. Felicity Mathews, Business Unlocked, thanks so much for being along today.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.